Alright guys, so welcome to the secret history, living in your aquarium. We've got everything fully planted and pretty much settled. Things need to grow out quite a bit and things need to melt back a bit, so there'll be lots of maintenance. You can see we've got one intrepid guppy soul in here, and then we've got this thing planted up pretty well. Sometimes these things look sparse at first, but then over time they really pick up a lot of their oomph as things start growing. So we've got the Hydrocotyle verticillata growing along the edges. This grows up really tall like this very quickly, and so you can see there's some planted back there, and it kind of lines the sandy path, but it's just going to kind of give a little bit of a different pattern, kind of interrupts, which in Wabikusa and in aquascaping, when you have a line that goes this way, and then if we had this same type of stone and we turned it 90 degrees, that would be considered tension. So like this stone pointing this way and this one kind of going this way, that's considered like subtle tension or half tension, whereas a 90-degree angle is full tension. And so full tension, but with a hardscape and then with the softer aquascape or greenscape, allows that to feel a little more peaceful. Now at the same time, I'm trying to take this crypt pink flamingo and actually acclimate it in the sand. Now below the sand there is nutrients, so it does have nutrients. I also tried to put a few pieces of the pink flamingo crypt up here, and it's really melting really bad. It was already melting in another tank, and then I moved it knowing that it may not survive the move, but hoping the roots would. So then I trimmed the roots, and they're under there. So there's some there and some up there, but the idea overall is going to be that there will be either 3 pieces that survive. So there's one, and there's actually 2 planted back here. There's another little one that's buried. But the idea would be to have 2 smaller ones back there and then 3 bigger ones in kind of a little bit of a triangle here, kind of around this triangular rock. And then this whole thing is supposed to kind of have a line if you follow it, just like if it were a mountain range that have eroded over millions of years. And this is also kind of a canyon, like a slot canyon. And when we look down at this level, you can see that the path gets pretty narrow. And it also goes up a good 5 or 6 inches. When you look at the incline, it helps with the optical illusion. However, the substrate is mixing right now, so we'll have to kind of wait and see what we can get away with, so to speak, back there. But we've also got the Rotala mini red butterfly in there, as well as the orange butterfly Rotala mini, and some there's just a few different morphs of the butterfly Rotala minis in there. So there's like a yellow, a pink, a red, and an orange all along the back, interspersed. And so hopefully that grows out and up, and it has some nice color and kind of blocks out a bit of the back. Now the hang off the back filter, you can see it's really filtering out a lot of this silt and stuff that still settles on the hardscape. And that's going to happen as we do all our water changes to settle this scape in. This scape is going to be basically, if you saw the video where we talk about keeping up with melting plants, it's going to be melting. So most these plants are not underwater plants that were simply moved. Most of them are tissue cultures, so they have to adjust, and you're gonna see melt. Like here, it's tissue that's dying. That's gonna make ammonia, so we need to get that out of the water, and we need to get rid of that tissue. So we need to be cleaning up the tissue, and the nearite snails look to be safe in here, so I'm gonna throw more nearites in here. I don't know how shrimp will do, but we're probably gonna try a couple of the Malua shrimp, since I have so many of those and they're pretty hardy, but we'll see how they do. Now the highest point for planting is going to be this Logonandrum eboldi silver powder, and it's planted all the way in the back there, and that's going to be the busiest, tallest corner back there. Since this corner is so elevated, I kind of wanted to emulate that and planted some Lobelia cardinalis mini, and also some red Cryptocorn spiralis, as well as some Crypt albina, and also some Crypt undulatus and lutea are in there. Now, all these tissue cultures that were started in here a month or two ago, and I don't know how they're gonna adjust. Now, a few of them seem to be doing really well. This one is taking off pretty well, but it's getting algae. So we'll have to keep that algae off there. It's pretty normal to get the green filamentous algae, especially when you've got exposed substrate, when you didn't cap it all. Now, the other thing we have is we have the Areocallan Pearl, I believe is what it's called, the variety, and so I planted 3 of those, but these are very dynamic in their just jagged spikes, which kind of mimic these, even though they've been weathered in the scape. It kind of feels like Mother Nature has tamped that down, the jaggedness of how these would have looked, these cliffs, and that kind of brings back some of it. So there's one up here, and there's one there, and there's another one there. So again, using Fibonacci sequence numbers, rules of 3. Also, we've got the Bucephalandra planted here. We've got another red tiger Crypt spiralis. These might get too leggy and tall to make sense where they are. I want to keep them a little lower and a little denser, a little more compact, and so we'll have to see how that goes. Now, as soon as I move things, I have a good chance of losing it or it dying. So it's all a tricky battle. And, you know, here we've got all the glossostigma that's been planted, you know, essentially in a grid and then alternating. So it's kind of a checkerboard pattern. But in other areas, I took clumps and tried that, just to try a big clump of it. Because this ADA Amazonia mixed with the Fluval stratum, it's just notorious for not, you see the other roots are so small, they're so shallow, that there's almost no difference between tucking a plant completely under the substrate and having its roots under the substrate. And it's a fine line between choking that plant out and anchoring that plant. So that's why most people actually dry start those carpeting plants. Now, the one thing that I have decided to go ahead and do is some CO2, and so we are gonna have that running at kind of this gentle, very gentle pace. I don't like to overdo the CO2, and then I like to walk the CO2 back if I can over time, honestly. But see, this dirt is on here, and I really want these rocks to shine, so I'll hit them with a toothbrush soon here. And also we'll probably spot check with some hydrogen peroxide and just kind of get rid of that detritus. It'll melt that, it'll sterilize it, essentially destroy the cells that are there that are bacterial. And then we'll kind of use a little straw. Actually, we'll either use a straw or we'll use some of this airline tubing that I will tape to a rigid object. Actually, I like to tape it to this, or use some rubber bands and run it right up to the end, and then I use my own mouth with plenty of slack on it to spot, treat, and grab any of the little leaves and things. And then what I do is I just take a little basket or a little jar. A lot of times you can actually just use the tissue culture cups, put a little water in them so that they do that kind of thing, and then when you're sucking up the pieces, you can then put them into your little floating deal, and then from there you can, you know, deal with it and throw it out or whatever you need to do. So I like to keep those around when escape's new. Also, when we take water in and out, we're going to be using this to diffuse that water so it doesn't go everywhere and make a mess. Another little new change is this isn't the heater I want to keep, but it is one that's set at 78. It's for a 10 gallon, it's 100 watts, and it's for kind of like a betta tank or a real small tank, but it is very slim, as you can see, and it should just keep things at about the right temperature for plants. In fact, it's a little underpowered for this tank, so it might be on constantly, and it may not get quite to the 78, and that's good. I mean, 74 would be a better temperature for plants. But in any case, we've had the guppy in here, or the endler, I should say, in here for 4 or 5 days now, and we've had the nearite in here for 4 days, three or 4 days, and so everybody's getting along okay, even though we are still registering a little bit of ammonia, and the scape is still registering pretty neutral to slightly acidic, but not. It hasn't been basic at all ever. And then here's the ammonia. So you see there's a little bit of green, but this test is one of those ones that really depends on the light you're looking at. Natural light is needed. And then as far as nitrates, no nitrites, but nitrates are starting to come up. So it is starting to cycle. It's getting cycled up in here, and also in the big old hiding stash of lava rock that we've got in there that serves as kind of a plenum for the anoxic filtration that'll be going on. But that's a much longer term process as detritus settles. You can see how this happens actually over time, and to clean up the path, the easiest way is to actually just siphon up water and sand and strata, and then from there it goes into a bucket that you can control, you can sort through later, and then you can pour the bottom of the bucket basically through this. The sand's going to go through it, the fluval mostly won't, and then you can resource that. So I did that today to kind of clean up the path before the path was all mixed up. And it's just an ongoing thing. Also, you can level it out, but as we're trying to get these plants to take hold, grow through that inch of sand and get down into the substrate, especially with crypts that are slow growing, it's going to take a little while, so we got to be patient with it. The stem plants will probably be ready in a day or two for that, and you can see in the back right towards the top that the Lobelia cardinalis is taking off and growing up pretty well. We've also got some pearling going on even the crypts back there that are struggling somewhat. So it's a bit of a mixed bag of how the plants are doing and how things are doing. Really, this tank, it's going to be about getting the ammonia under control, pumping in enough CO2 that the plants have the energy, because remember, when plants are out of the water, 50% of their mass comes from carbon, from CO2. Now they fix some of that with their roots and some of that just from the air also, but that and then the nitrates, nitrogen gets broken down into ammonia. But if they have straight ammonia, then they burn and you end up with holes in your plants and yellowing and crispy brown, yellow, and black plants. So that's not good either. So we want to keep the water nice and clean. At the same time, we're going to be kind of wasting some money on fertilizer, nutrients, because we've got root tabs and we've got active substrate, so that the roots, when they come online, when they realize, hey, I'm being submerged, I'm going to be an aquatic plant now, they'll activate and start feeding. But until then, they're going to start feeding through the water column as long as their vascular system can support it. However, a lot of times they lose their vascular system as the leaves melt, and that's why we're cutting those leaves, getting rid of them right away, right when you know that the leaf's no good anymore, when it's translucent like that. Just get rid of it. The other thing is going to be key is keeping up this flow on the tank, so that everything you want to see it moving just ever so slightly, just swaying, and that's enough to get the oxygen around it and then to get the CO2 around it. The real trick, though, is to not agitate the surface of the water so that you get all the off-gassing of the CO2 that we're spending the time and money to put in here. I have a video on how to set up CO2, one on tissue culture plants and one on hardscaping. So if any of this you're interested in how we've gotten here thus far, just do a little search on my channel through my videos and you'll find it quickly. So the other thing we're going to do is be cleaning this filter out, just wringing it out just to get the silt and sediment out. With this cap over a lot of it, and then just with settling over time, it'll naturally work itself out. But it's kind of an interesting process, because right now I want shrimp, I want snails to be able to clean up all these little bits of floating mulm and things, but right now I'm the little shrimp. So this is when you really want to baby your scape if you didn't dry start it. If I had dry started it, I could have done saran wrap over the whole thing, put a little bowl of water in here with a heater in it so that it would keep it evaporating and keep the humidity and the temperature in here stable at, say, 80 degrees. And then that you can just literally cut up your tissue culture into even just teeny tiny pieces, like piece like that, and you can just throw it on the just throw it on the substrate, and as long as it's humid, it'll seek the moisture in the substrate and the nutrients, the roots will, and it's got the CO2 in just in the ambient air. You can take your own breath and breathe into it, into the tank a few times, and then seal it off, and that's actually enough CO2 that it'll be cycling through. When I ship plants, Lucas Bretz taught me that, is that just inhaling once and exhaling once into a bag, inhale out of the bag obviously, and then just exhale into a bag with plants, a damp towel, paper towel that is, will actually simulate pretty closely the carbon ratio, CO2 ratio, and CO and O2 and nitrogen and just the atmospheric gases that we're accustomed to anyways. It approximates it actually pretty darn well, and it'll keep them okay for a few days. So as long as you're doing that and allowing the respiration, you can dry start it and you don't have to deal with all this headache. And a lot of people will cover the sand path too, because then you don't get any of the erosion and all that. But you guys saw that in the tricks and tips for aquascaping of how I've avoided that spilling over insanely like it does sometimes in some scapes. There's some spots where you wanted a natural transition and there's going to be plants covering it anyways. So that's kind of the trick with all this, is you're having to imagine, okay, what will this look like when there's no brown showing and there's actually some plants hanging over the edge here and then some more growing up. So you got to have some foresight and you got to have a lot of patience. But I hope you guys like where this is going. I hope you can kind of see where it's going, and that you enjoy sharing this little journey with me. The other thing that we've got going on now is we've kind of got a background tank that's down here, and we've got some Ludwigia palustris, and then just some more carpeting plants, totally low tech. But what I was going to show you guys at the same rate, what the glossostigma and what the dwarf baby tears, I got some dwarf baby tears the other day, what they do in a lower light or medium light tank without all of the benefits. I mean, we do have an active substrate under a sand cap, but it'll be interesting to compare and contrast and see what ends up working better in the end. So stay tuned, and please like, subscribe if you want to stay tuned, and I'll talk to you guys later. Have a great one. Take care, guys. I'll talk to you next time. Bye.